Hey, what do you know? This is the Melvin Live show. And in today's show, we're going to be talking about content creation, but we're going to talk about it from the point of view of the arguably the world's most famous investor. Who are we talking about here? Warren Buffett, of course. Now, before we go into today's topic itself, let me just share a few things that I know about Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett, if you haven't already heard about him or you if you do not know about him, he's arguably one of the wisest guy ever because of his ability to bet on corporate America. Essentially, this man has invested money and bought and hold a large number of companies in America and betting on them because he understands a simple principle that sometimes many of us try to get too fancy. And because when we try to get too fancy, we kind of miss the boat itself. And we kind of think that, everything has to be this complicated, where in fact, it doesn't have to be. And so the I recall one of the stories that I read about Warren Buffett was that when he goes to a new place, he would actually go to the supermarket. I mean, that would be one of the places that he have to visit, right? And that is the supermarket. And the reason why he would spend his time going to the supermarket, it's because he wants to see what are some products that any supermarket in the world, right? Any supermarket in the world must carry that product. Now, I'm just going to give you 3 seconds to think of, some of the names of those products itself. And I'd like you to put them down in the comments below. So, you know, names that if you walk into any supermarket anywhere in the world, you would see these brands. Ready? One, two, three. All right. Have you written it down? Now, so of course, names like, for example, let's say Coca-Cola, right? It's definitely one of the few names that you would definitely see as you walk into a supermarket, whether it is in Singapore or it is in Japan or it's in China or it is in America or London. You would see Coca-Cola in almost every convenience store and also supermarket. What's another brand that you can think of that you would almost always see in a supermarket? right? Another famous brand that you would almost always see would be brands like M&M's, right? M&M's chocolate, for example. It's one that you always see, and you arguably anywhere in the world that you go to, you will see M&M's at 7-Eleven, or convenience store or supermarket, for example, right? So that is the key idea behind this man's thinking. And the thinking, it's something that is so simple that I think many of us kind of overlooked it. And I think it's called consumer monopoly, right? Consumer monopolies. So what exactly is a consumer monopoly? So of course, the good old Warren Buffett invests in not just brands like, for example, Coca-Cola, but he also invests in other companies like Geico, as well as American Express, Visa, and Master. Now, the why does he do that? Right? So at the fundamental of it comes down to this thing called consumer monopolies. Now, consumer monopolies essentially means that it is a product or service that it's hard to be replicated, and there is very few, if any, effective competitor, right? So it is a product or service that can hardly be replicated, and it is a it doesn't have an effective competitor. So before we kind of dive into that, let's look at what are some companies not that do not fall into this category. So one immediate example that comes to mind would be airlines, right? Why airlines? First and foremost is that yes, it is a product or service, but is it really indistinguishable? I mean, for the most part, you just want to get from point A to point B, right? And yes, you can throw in all this different differentiating factor, but those differentiating factor actually have very low barriers to entry. So, for example, Singapore Airline could introduce the suite class, in addition to the first class experience, right? And very quickly, other airlines like Qatar Airlines and Emirates, for example, could replicate something similar and even one up on SIA itself. And the other thing is that in order to kind of stay ahead of the competition, because competition is so intense, right? In order to stay ahead of the competition itself, a huge amount of investment has to go into place to make sure they kind of stay ahead. And even with that huge level of investment, the competitive edge can be eroded fairly quickly. So airlines is something that um, people would it would not fall under this category as a consumer monopoly. So another example would be, say, RC Cola, right? I mean, do you even know RC Cola? No. So when you walk into a store, and if you walk into a convenience store, let's say in Japan, and you ask for RC Cola, I think there is a high chance that nobody would know what the hell you're talking about. But if you walk into the store and you ask for a Coca Cola, do you have a Coke? Even if you do not speak Japanese, chances are you would be able to get a can of Coke at the convenience store, even if you speak no Japanese at all. So that is the core idea behind that. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper and look at what makes a consumer monopoly. So there are a few characteristics here. Number one is that is distinguishable because of a brand, right? So, for example, does anyone here do not know Coca-Cola, right? Even my kids, who have never drank Coca-Cola until we went to the Coke factory in Atlanta, they already knew about Coca-Cola because it's splashed everywhere, on billboards, on advertisements, and you will find it in every store that you go to, right? So it's always there. And it's a brand name that, any store, in order to be competitive, would definitely want to carry Coca-Cola, right? So, if you go to a store and you expect to find a particular brand, right, like Coca-Cola or Nike shoes, for example, you walk into a shop and you expect to see that, and you do not see that. What do? Right? I mean, when you walk to any sports store, you would expect, unless of course it's a Adidas store, right? But if you walk into any generic sports store like Foot Locker or World of Sports here in Singapore, you would almost always find Nike, Adidas, and the few of them, right? And so these are the kind of brands that any shops, if they want to be competitive, if they want people to come into their shops, they have to carry those brands, right? So that's one category. Now, the second category of companies that Warren Buffett likes to invest in are what they call repetitive services. So, what are some repetitive services? Well, for one, Geico is a repetitive service. So, every year you need some renewal of your insurance, for example. So, like for instance, when I was in the US and we decided to buy a car, um, one of the main thing that we had to get was insurance, right? And insurance was huge because you want to be able to not just insure yourself against anyone who knocks into you. You also want to insure yourself in case you knock into someone else, right? And over in the US, for example, you can get sued whether you get knocked or you knock someone down, right? And so insurance is so crucial that it's just something that you cannot live without. You have to have insurance coverage, for example. And once you have an insurance coverage, you are more inclined to want to stay with a particular um, insurance company, for example, right? So Geico it's a firm that has been invested by Warren Buffett, and repetitive services. So something that people would have to come back over and over again, right? So whether it's it because there is a need for that, or there is always something new that is going on, or there is something that it's really required by the people who you serve, for example, right? So that's category number two. Category number three would be what I call as a gateway services. Now, what are gateway services? If you think about gateway services, the easiest way to think about them, it's like they are operating a toll, right? A toll gate. Okay, so in order for you to go from point A to point B, you have to pass the toll, and in order to pass the toll, you have to pay a fee, and there is no way around it. I mean, the only way that you can avoid not paying the fee is not going to your place at all, right? So think about what are some gateway services that you can think of, right? So one is, for example, of course, um, Visa, Mastercard, American Express, credit cards in general, right? They are the ones that are what we call gateway services. Because let's say if you want to buy something online, right? Of course, increasingly now you get other providers like Alipay and the likes of them. But the ones that are universally and widely accepted all over the world, right? You will almost always see Visa and Master, and to a certain extent, American Express. And so what happens here is that when you use your Mastercard, for example, you are actually y- exercising a convenience, because you are paying and the bank would actually pay the merchant, and because the bank paid the merchant, the bank would actually makes a fee, and on top of that, Master and Visa would also make a fee due to your transaction. So just think about the number of transactions that goes on even as we speak, right? And the number of times the Mastercard is being used, and the number of fees that Mastercard can collect. It is just unthinkable. So over here in Singapore, we have this thing called electronic road pricing, or we, tongue in cheek, we call it every road pays. ERP, right? So it's like every time you want to go through or you want to use a particular highway, you got to pay a fee. And there is no way you can avoid paying the fee. I mean, you can don't pay, but you will incur a fine, or you have to take an alternative road, which is going to take you a longer time, arguably. And so if you take the highway and you pay the ERP toll, you will get to enjoy, a less congested highway itself, right? And so just think about the number of cars that pass through the highway and the amount of tolls that the government collect on a single day. It is just, mind blown. So likewise, the third type of category of companies would be, gateway services, right? So now, having seen all that, I mean, having looked at all these three types of companies that Warren Buffett likes to invest in, let's take a look and say how we can apply it to content creation. So as a content creator myself, for example, one of the biggest struggle that I have is always how to come up with ideas, how to come up with a topic to talk about, right? Because arguably the topic that I want to talk about has been talked about by many other people, right? I mean, if you Google content creation on YouTube, you are going to see a lot of videos talking about content creation. How do you do content creation in 2020? How do you win? How do you get attention on YouTube in 2020? On and on and on and on, right? And so, you know, a topic like content creation, you will get a ton of people who are talking about the same topic, right? So if you're just gonna talk about what everybody has been talking about, you are just going to be one of the voices out there, and it likely you're gonna drown out. Just like 2 days ago, where we talk about showing up isn't gonna be enough, right? So it's like, you show up and you talked about content creation, but you talked about it just like everybody else, then um arguably someone could watch another video and skip yours and still be able to be wiser about content creation uh, in that area itself, right? So do not be a commodity. What you want to do is you want to create a way that you talked about a topic, and there is something unique about you, right? So that uniqueness about you could be you talking about a topic, like, for example, I recall, one particular episode itself where the late Tony Sear was being interviewed, and he had himself submerged in a bathtub, right? I mean, that is different, and that it's quirky, and that gets attention. And because of his quirky and his unique personality himself, Tony Sayer gets, a lot of attention in that respect, right? And in by the way, RIP, man, Tony. So one way it's really to project your personality into the way you talk about a particular topic itself, right? But for me, I don't think it works that way, because when it comes to personality, I'm pretty mild guy, so I'm not over the top, I'm not someone who it's kind of loud, or you know my personality isn't going to shine. Probably it's not larger than life, isn't going to shine on YouTube, for example. So the approach that I take is I want to brand my topics from a point of view of not just, a content creator, but from a point of view of a strategist. So, in other words, when you watch my content, when you read my content, I am talking about a particular topic, but I'm talking about it from a strategic perspective itself. Now, that is the thing that is unique. And so, if you're someone who is concerned about, I want to do this thing, but I just don't want to do it just checking off, a box on the list itself. I want to do it in a strategic way, then this channel, it's what you want to pay attention to. And speaking of channel, if you have not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel itself. All right, that will mean a great deal to me, and give me the thumbs up. That would be something that really, really encourages me. All right, so that is number one. So you really want to create your own brand. So question to you is, what is your brand? What is your unique in terms of you talking about the particular topic itself? All right. So that's number one. Number two is that you want to talk about a topic or select a topic that is repeatable. Now, what I mean by that is that, yes, it's good to talk about, evergreen topics, evergreen content, right? But you also want to look into a particular field of it that, there is always um, new things that is coming up. There's always new ways of doing certain things. There is always new tools that can make it better, for instance, right? And so the field that I pick, it's video. And the reason why I pick video is because video, there are so many things that you can do, and you can talk about videos, that it's just not going to be, it's not something that you could go still on, right? So, for example, in terms of video, you can talk about the way that you structure the video, right? You can talk about the way that you put out your show, for example. You can talk about the gear. You can talk about, if you have this amount of money, this amount of budget for creating a studio, what are some of the things that you can get that will gives you the highest leverage. So you see, once again, I'm looking at it from a strategic point of view. I'm not saying that, oh, you should get all this swanky um uh, gear itself because it will make you look cool. But if you have a limited amount of budget, then these are the set of gear that you definitely must get, because this will bring your video to the next level. And constantly, in the industry itself, there is always new things that is coming out. So there is always new ways of teaching people, sharing with people what are some of the new tools, because a H5 Zoom right now may still be relevant, but 2 years from now, a H5 Zoom may become irrelevant, or a microphone like this will become irrelevant, or there will be definitely a new model that comes up. And how can we strategically use some of this gear to make a better quality show for ourselves, right? So find a topic that it's constantly being renewed, it's constantly being updated, right? Do not go after a topic whereby you can talk about it in 20 episodes and you are done, right? So that's number two. Now, number three is what we call gateway services. Now, gateway services are something that whereby you want to think about when you create your content. It is a gateway to lead to something more, right? So the content in and of itself, it's not can stand on its own, but it should become a gateway to something else, right? And that something else could be probably an online course that you provide, or that something else could be, let's say, a book that you are writing, or that something else could be a newsletter that you are curating itself, right? And so the key idea here is that the content that you create is in and of itself can stand on its own. It can be independently consumed. But the whole idea with creating your content is to take it to the next level, to take your audience deeper down into the process of helping them achieve that goal. All right. And so with that, that's my take on how you can create content like the Oracle of Omaha, right? And so if you got a question, if you got a suggestion, if you got a comment, make sure you leave it in the comments below. I read all the comments and I welcome all the comments that you have for me, right? And with that, I thank you so much for watching. And if you got a topic that you'd like me to cover, something that it's going to be make a strategic impact in terms of you building your 1%, 1 million or digital business, leave it in the comment and I'll take a look at that. All right. With that, thank you so much. Stay safe and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.